Pop quiz. What has the performance of a sports car, the space of a large SUV, and the ability to get you across the country with the speed and luxury of a private jet? Answer: the Porsche Panamera GTS. But there remains a bigger question. Can a big 2-ton limo be fun to drive? Stay tuned to find out. Today you find me at the wheel of a Porsche Panamera GTS. And now the Panamera sits in a bit of a funny position within the Porsche family because there are other models within the range that are kind of cutting its lunch. It's not the only 4-door anymore with the arrival of the Taycan. If you're after family hauling ability, then the Cayenne is supremely capable. And if driving purity is what you look for, then the Porsche Cayman, Boxster and 911 are there for your go-fast needs. And that kind of puts the Panamera in a bit of a tricky position because this is a limo, and that means that people are expecting it to be comfortable and opulent and luxurious. But this badge, it means something. By virtue of being a Porsche, this has to be the best driving limo on the face of the planet. Lucky then that there is a 3-letter badge on the boot that says GTS. And if you know anything about Porsches, you'll know that GTS means that this Panamera is all about the driver. If you want to keep up to date with all things performance car related, make sure to like and subscribe. We have new videos being uploaded every week. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's cover the basics. The Porsche Panamera is now in its 2nd generation, and this GTS model sits in the sweet spot of the range, above the entry-level models, but just below the bonkers Turbo S flagship. Under the bonnet is a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 that produces 353 kilowatts and 620 newton meters. Importantly, that's a 15 kilowatt increase over the previous model. Power is sent to all 4 wheels via an 8-speed PDK dual-clutch transmission, helping rocket the Panamera to 100 kilometers an hour from a standstill in 3.9 seconds. For a car that weighs 2 tons, a 0 to 100 time of under 4 seconds is pretty damn fast. And remember, that's coming from Porsche, who are notorious for understating their performance figures. And if you were curious, the top speed is a neat 300 kilometers an hour. We wouldn't expect anything less from a German Autobahn missile now, would we? And to cap it all off, there's room in here for 4 full-grown adults, their luggage, there's lashings of leather and Alcantara, and frankly, a dizzying array of tech. But there's a catch. The Panamera GTS starts at $309,000, and this test car, it adds $30,000 of optional extras to that. It might sound a bit unfair, but the Porsche Panamera wasn't much of a looker when the 1st generation car was revealed. However, a series of subtle changes from Porsche's design team have kept the car looking fresh, and dare I say it, handsome, despite the overall shape remaining largely untouched. It's still a very large car, measuring in at nearly 2 meters wide and over 5 meters long. New for 2020 are some body colour parts in the front grille and slight tweaks to the rear bumper. The carmine red paint is an optional extra but looks absolutely stunning, while the rear taillights are now connected by a light bar that runs across the entire width, like other models in the Porsche range. Probably the only real design letdown are the standard 20-inch rims that don't quite match what we'd expect from a $300,000 luxury limo. The central party piece of the Panamera is the 3-piece rear wing. You either love it or hate it. Me, I'm a fan. Partly because of how it came to be. You see, when the Panamera was in development, Porsche's designers and engineers needed to find a way to both get what they wanted. The engineers were adamant a certain width spoiler was necessary for aerodynamics, while the designers wouldn't budge on the rear styling. The end result is this intricate folding design. Germans, eh? Overall, the updated Panamera is an important lesson in how small, well-executed tweaks make a massive difference. Inside, there's heaps of headroom and legroom, and ahead of you in the instrument cluster, you've got this central analog tacho, which is surrounded on both sides by a customizable digital dash. The Alcantara wheel and sport seats are standard for the GTS, and you have a kick-ass, brilliant 14-speaker Bose stereo system. Now, there are some things that I don't entirely love about this interior, namely the haptic touch that you've got in the central section here. It's useful enough, but buttons would be better, I think. The worst offense, though, is the central air vents. There's actually no lever to adjust them. You have to go through the climate function in the infotainment sub-menu to even adjust them. There's levers over here, so why can't we get them over here? It's a bit confusing. The rear passengers get heaps of amenities. The seats are really comfortable and they get to control all their own climate functions. You get soft closed doors as well, because luxury. But what you get inside a Porsche isn't what's most important. What's important is how it drives. Now, the first thing you notice when you start up the GTS is the deep V8 burble. It's instantaneously recognizable. And that's a good thing, because for a previous generation for the GTS, they'd actually taken the V8 out and replaced it with a turbocharged V6. Now, while the 6 isn't a bad engine in its own right, it wasn't particularly special, and this twin-turbo V8 is very, very cool. And Porsche even admits that it was an emotional decision to put the V8 back in. I got to admit, it's a damn good one. This thing sounds awesome. I mean, just listen to this. Power delivery is potent, with peak torque arriving from just 1800 RPM and being available all the way to 4 grand. While the engine isn't the most characterful in terms of outright power or rev range, it makes up with it with a sports exhaust system which comes standard for the GTS. And if you can't be quickest, you better sound the best. And then we get to the engine, and it gives you a really wide power band to play in, so you're not searching for the power or furiously trying to eke out every single rev as you're driving this thing. What really makes the engine excel is actually the gearbox, because man, Porsche are just so good at gearboxes. The weird ratio and gearing in the Cayman GT4 aside, it's really hard to find a chink in the armor of this 8-speed PDK. Leave it to its own devices and it's almost got this psychic link. It'll give you the right gear at the right time, particularly if you're using the appropriate driving mode. If you want to take control, you can just hit it over into manual and it will just give you crisp, clean gear shifts when you want them, how you want them, up and down. It's great. And the active all-wheel drive system shuffles power forward and back as needed, meaning the tyres have the exact amount of power that they need when they need it. Now, unlike other cars in the Volkswagen Group sibling, Porsche is much more willing to send a lot of the power to the rear wheels, giving the Panamera an altogether livelier character. It's such a well-refined system that it's a wonder that other car manufacturers just haven't copied Porsche's homework, to be honest. This is the gold standard. When you're driving the Panamera in its normal settings, it's a wonderful place to be. The air suspension is really well tuned and it's got new dampers and management system for 2021. It's, in normal, really comfortable. It's actually quite wafty and sublime, and we're on a pretty pockmarked Aussie B road at the moment and it's dealing with potholes and bumps really easily. Around town, the steering is linear and comfortable, the gear shifts smooth and subtle, but being a Porsche, you want to be able to really grab this car and drive it fast, and luckily the Panamera GTS will do just that. A corner carving limo? Oh yeah. Far from being a wallowing mess of a barge in the corners, the GTS is actually really capable. It actually sits 10mm lower than the rest of the Panamera range, and that gives it a really hunkered down athletic feeling. And the old thinking that air suspension is just antithetical to dynamic prowess is wrong. Porsche have done a great job here. And with the active management system, the body control is just awesome. You can really chuck it into bends and grab the GTS by the scruff of the neck, and it handles it fine. In fact, it's great. It's up there with its Porsche 911 siblings in terms of driver enjoyment. And part of that is thanks to the active four-wheel steering system, which is an optional extra that's actually fitted to this car. Now, it's not cheap, but it's definitely worth its money because it transforms this car in the bends. Far from being a 5-meter long limo that struggles to turn in, the front end becomes really sharp and pointed, and you can just get the car settled into the bend and lay into it, and it just takes it. It's fantastic. One of the things that makes this steering system so good actually is the ratio. It falls into this sort of Goldilocks area where you don't have to put in huge armfuls of lock to get the car turned, but it's also not too quick. It's not super twitchy and darty in the front end. It's just confidence inspiring, really. You just put in smooth, gentle inputs and it heads where you want to go. And despite all of that corner carving ability, when you're done and you want to drive home, you can just switch it back to normal, everything calms down, and this ride is just sublime. Steel brakes are standard, and while they save you in terms of cost compared to carbon ceramics in the final options price list, you don't actually lose that much in terms of performance. That is, unless you're doing track days, but really, who's doing a track day in a limo? Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres are fitted as standard in some pretty wide sizes, giving the GTS a really sizable footprint, which it deploys to devastating effect. If you're looking for a car that can take you and 3 mates to a ski field and you want to terrify them on the drive there, this is the car for you. And we should appreciate it while we can, because big twin-turbo V8 limos aren't going to be around for that long with an electric future coming. So if you're lucky enough to add one of these to your driveway, please drive it and enjoy it. I implore you. If you want to stay up to date with all things motor, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.